Hey guys, Andy Plays back here with some fresh RuneScape content. As promised last time, today we're going to talk about the regions. But this isn't going to be a classic region guide like in many other videos. Instead, I want to talk about what I take into consideration when planning my build. The starting regions are already kind of ridiculous. God Wars Dungeon 3 gives us access to some of the best equipment and abilities in the entire game. Carapac gives us the fractured stuff of Armadil and the greater concentrated blast ability codex. The Arc Glacier provides us with the Lang weapons. Zerg offers the best combat capes for all 4 styles, the Magma Tempest ability codex, the Full Book, and the Zerg sword. Croesus has the tier 90 Crypt Plume armor and extremely useful skilling offense for mining and woodcutting on his drop table. And Zamorak adds the Bow of the Last Guardian, Vestments of Havoc, and the Chaos Roar ability codex, as well as options for greater sunshine and greater death's swiftness. Then there are the Sanctum of Rebirth and Raziel's Citadel. The Roar of Awakening and the Ode to Deceit provide a complete tier 95 magic dual wield setup, giving magic an extremely strong weapon path without requiring any optional region. Another feature here is the Gate of Elidinus, which is a skilling boss with huge rewards and amazing training methods, especially for divination, crafting, construction and mining, although the first 2 are probably the better options. And Raziel is essentially a one-stop shop for the best necromancy gear from weapons to armor. So before choosing a single optional region, we already have access to tier 95 weapons for all combat styles, best in slot melee power armor, tier 90 magic tank armor, major ability upgrades, and several endgame bosses. Of course, most of us won't be able to get all of that right at the beginning, me included. But we don't have to choose a region just to get access to it. And that changes how I look at my optional regions. I don't need each region to build a combat style from scratch all the way to the end game. Instead, I can ask what each region actually adds to an already extremely powerful progression path. There is also one major blessing interaction that affects this entire discussion. A few of the early Saradomi blessings scale with armor rating and become considerably stronger while using a defender or a shield. So for once, tank armor, defenders and shields may not only help us survive, they may actually become major offensive upgrades. I will go much deeper into the blessings and the relics as well in separate videos. But this interaction matters when comparing the regions. And with that out of the way, let's start with the region that to me is by far the easiest choice. If I had to recommend one region without knowing anything else about your build, it would be probably the desert. It simply has an absurd amount of content. For skilling, Manifest alone provides excellent mid-level fishing, mining, woodcutting and thieving content. Head's Oasis adds strong options for hunter and farming, with some additional agility training as well. Curried Ed provides archaeology spots from the early levels deep into the endgame, useful collections, and some very strong monolith relics. And the Sophanum Slayer dungeon covers another substantial chunk of Slayer progression. But the desert becomes even more impressive once we start looking at bossing. Godwars Dungeon 2 gives us access to 4 excellent mid-game bosses and a very natural route into tier 80 and tier 85 equipment. And eventually, it leads us to Telos. With the amount of power available from the blessings, I am extremely curious to see how far I can push Telos and Rage during the league, since I am really struggling with it in the main game. But even Telos is no longer the headline boss of this region, because we got a mascot. For me, a mascot is currently the best boss in the game, and one of the biggest reasons to choose the desert even before we knew anything about the blessings and relics. It is a true group endgame encounter, and the reward table is incredible. Tumikins Resplendence is currently the best in slot magic armor. Tumikin Slide is the best melee side. The Devourer's Guard provides an alternative T95 Necromancy mainhand weapon. The Devourer's Nexus offers a DPS focused Nexus for Necromancy as well. If I can find groups during the league, a mascot alone could provide an entire late game progression path. And there are even some more niche options. Heists 1 can provide the Legatus' Ember Staff, the Gloomfire Bow, and a Necromancy Mask. I don't think heists alone would ever justify choosing the desert, but since the region is already this strong, those rewards became useful additional goals. In particular, the Gloomfire Bow has a very strong special attack that can be used in EUF later in the account. And then there is a boss I honestly did not expect to become particularly important for the league, the Caliphate King. Normally, I would not choose an entire region because I desperately need to farm the Caliphate King. In general, I would rather give that bug a pass altogether, but the blessings suddenly make defenders a lot more interesting, and League 2 removes the normal requirement to progress through every previous defender tier before obtaining the highest tiers. That means the melee Caliphate defender can be completed entirely within the desert, cause all of its components are dropped by the Caliphate King. And the Caliphate Defender, combined with high-tier tank or power armor and Theragod's Aegis, could become one of the defining pieces of my entire league build. That is not something I expected to say about the Caliphate King before these blessings were revealed. And finally, the desert is the region that gives us access to ancient magics. Exactly how the quest requirements will work is still not completely clear at the time of recording. We know that many quests will be automatically completed when regions are unlocked, but we do not yet have the complete list. But ancient magics themselves are part of the desert package, and that is another major advantage for magic. So we have Manifos, Hetzer Aces, Carried Ed, the Sophonim Slayer dungeon, Godboss Dungeon 2, Telos, a Mascot, the Caliphate King, and Asian magic, and a lot more. The desert is useful in the early game, the mid game, and the absolute end game. For me, that is not up to debate. The desert is my first region. My second choice has also been relatively consistent throughout my planning, the wilderness. And the biggest reason is combat progression. Since I am planning to have melee as my main endgame combat style, Elite Dungeon 2 is incredible. Greater Barge, Greater Flurry, and Greater Fury are 3 major melee upgrades available from that single dungeon. 82 also provides Draconic Energy, and during Leagues 2, an additional source of tectonic energy. So, if I want to build magic power armor, that path is also open. Elite Dungeon 3 gives me another source of dungeoneering experience and tokens, while eventually providing the Eldritch Crossbow, which remains a very interesting range EOF weapon. But there's more to the region than just the elite dungeons. First, there's Demonheim, and I think it is important to separate 2 different things here. There is the surface area around Demonheim, and then there is dungeoneering itself. The surface area provides a surprising amount of skilling progression. There are high-level mining resources, giving access to primal ores, as well as archaeology hotspots, including the progression towards the Badakar Sash Brush. Then of course there are the actual dungeoneering floors. Demonheim gives me an enormous self-contained training environment with its own skilling and combat progression, and the reward shop equipment becomes especially interesting under the new blessing system. Primal and Farseer shields, for example, may become extremely strong options once physical shields start contributing directly to both damage and survivability. There has been one significant change, however. Originally, the dungeoneering shop itself was another major argument for the wilderness. This is no longer true. It will also be available outside the wilderness walls, which means players no longer need a wilderness access simply to obtain dungeoneering reward weapons and shields. So that particular advantage has disappeared, but Demonheim itself has not. And even without reward shop exclusivity, the combination of surface resources, dungeoneering floors, and the elite dungeons remain extremely valuable. The wilderness has also one of the broader boss progressions. Early on there are the King Black Dragon and the Chaos Elemental and Flesh Hatcher Mechanics, which help build up boss kill count and may provide some of the first useful boss drops. So even if you choose the wilderness as your first optional region, you have some early boss progression. And then there is the Corporal Beast. Corp is especially interesting because of spirit shields, which provide substantial damage reduction. With armor rating and defensive equipment becoming more relevant through the blessing system, spirit shields could become a genuinely useful equipment rather than just a niche collection lock drop. We already talked about elite dungeons, and I will spare you a list of all the amazing slayer creatures that are within the wilderness. On the skilling side, there is also the wilderness agility course, the chaos altar, the farming patch, and a large selection of other skilling and combat tasks. Losing the Dungeoneering reward shop exclusivity made the wilderness somewhat weaker, but it did not remove its uniqueness. For the account I currently want to build, the wilderness is still my second core region. At this point, the account is already looking very strong. The starting regions give me Godless Dungeon 3, Raziel, the Sanctum, and with them some of the strongest equipment in the game. The desert gives me a huge skilling package, Godless Dungeon 2 with Telos, a Mascot, and Ancient Magic. And the wilderness offers Demonheim, Elite Dungeons 2 and 3, the major melee goodies, an enormous amount of combat progression. So my third region does not need to fix the account. It needs to add something that I genuinely cannot get anywhere else. That could be an exceptional skilling method, a major equipment path, a unique quality of life upgrade, or simply more endgame content that I actually want to play. Which brings me to the regions that unfortunately did not make it. The Fremennik provinces are, unfortunately for them, the easiest region for me to eliminate. There is not a lot of useful things here. We have the Dagon of Kings, Lunar Island and Lunar Magics and the Astral Altar, but there is nothing endgame like there. The region contains Kaldagrim, but except for the Dragon Hatchet, there's also not a lot here. The tier 100 pickaxe and hatchets are both extremely powerful goals. Although their full creation chains are complicated and tedious enough that they require a lot more than just simply unlocking Fremennik. So for someone determined to create the absolute best conventional gathering tools, Fremennik becomes considerably more interesting. The Dagonath Kings would normally add another argument. Their rings are traditionally required to create the best in slot rings, but that has changed specifically for this league. The Wax Matriarchs in Anachronia will instead be able to torpid their completed rings directly. So if I would choose Anachronia, I could obtain all of those best in slot rings without needing the Dagonath Kings rings first. That takes away one of Fremennik's most compelling arguments. The dragon tools remain, but compared with what the other regions offer, there is simply not enough here that my account desperately needs. So this was an easy elimination. Fremennik is out. And next we have Tirannwn, or Priv. Let's just call it Priv. I have absolutely no idea how to pronounce it. I am not an elf. This might be a controversial one, and it is actually one of the more painful regions to eliminate. Priv is still probably one of the best general purpose areas in the game. It offers convenient training methods for a huge number of skills, 7 spells and prayers, crystal equipment, useful slayer creatures, and during the leagues access to Solak. Solak gives us the Eredor's Grimoire, one of the strongest pocket slot items in the game. The Lost Grove also provides Cinderbin gloves, which remain exceptionally powerful whenever poison is relevant. But the biggest argument during the league may actually be one specific interaction with Nature's Network. If you have played the last league, you probably remember the butterfly method. During the Zaran voice of Cyrus, our Gathaxian butterflies have the potential to be completely absurd. Since the relic allows instant farming, it can be combined with those butterflies to create an extremely powerful, repeatable training method for your lowest skill. Because every time you farm a patch, there is a chance that one of those butterflies spawns, and if you catch it, you get a small amount of XP in your lowest skill. That small amount is multiplied with the league's buffs to create a lot of XP in your lowest skill. That means this method can patch almost any weakness in your account regarding skilling. A skill has an awkward level range with no good method in your unlocked regions. Butterflies. A skill is incredibly slow. Butterflies. A skill requires far more active training than you want. Even more butterflies. So this combination with Nature's Network makes Priv an even stronger general purpose skilling area. And I still don't think I need it. That is the problem. With the starting regions, the desert, and the wilderness already giving me so many different training methods, and the third region still to come, I think I can cover almost every skill well enough without using an entire region as a universal safety net. Would I love having the butterflies available if one of my plans goes wrong? Absolutely. But I would essentially be spending one of only 3 regions on insurance that I currently expect not to use. Cinderbane gloves run into a similar problem. They are incredibly strong, but they work best in a poison build, and I currently do not intend to build one. With Terror Guard's Aegis potentially rewarding armor rating, giving up a small amount of conventional power armor damage for significantly more armor and life points may not even be a terrible trade. Solak remains the strongest standalone PvM argument for Priv, but while his Grimroar is one of the strongest in the main game and would absolutely improve a crit build, it might not be necessary. The Chaotic Grim from Demonheim offers a mid-game to tier 7 option, and from Relic tier 7 onwards you're probably better off using the Relic item in the pocket slot anyways, since those are stronger in most, if not all scenarios. And regarding crits, there are still so many other things, including equipment, invention, abilities, and very strong relics. That offers a lot of crit power. I would be giving something up with Solak, but not enough to force an entire region choice. So Priv offers one of the strongest scaling safety nets in the entire league, Cinderbane gloves, and a fantastic endgame boss. For someone planning around the Nature's Network Butterflies method, I think it could be an exceptional pick. For me, however, the question is whether I want to spend one of my 3 choices preparing for a problem I do not expect to have. And my answer is no. Priv is out. Morytania was initially one of the easier regions for me to eliminate. It is probably my least favorite region in the main game. I got hopelessly lost during the vampire quest line, spent far too much time temple tracking for area tasks, and was very happy when I could finally leave the swamp behind for good. Unfortunately, the blessings have made Morytania considerably more interesting. Barrows offers a huge range of early and mid-level equipment. More importantly, for this particular league, the Barrows Defender is an important step towards the higher level Defender upgrades. Normally that progression begins with low-level defenders in Asgarnia, but leagues make several of those normal prerequisites considerably easier to bypass. Then we have Araxi. Araxi has great common loot, but also gives the tier 90 weapons which disassemble into noxious components. And even without ancient gizmos, noxious components allow me to create biting up to rank 3. So Morytania could give me another meaningful way to improve my crit setup. But Rise of the Six is where the blessings really change the equation. Watts provides augmentable tier 90 shields for melee, magic, and range. Normally those would primarily be used as defensive switches, but under Terragard's Aegis and potentially Steadfast Will, a tier 90 shield could become an extremely powerful part of an actual combat setup. Maximum armor scaling, maximum shield value. Suddenly, those shields are much more exciting than they would be in the main game. Watts additionally drops malevolent energy, which could be used to create malevolent armor, which then could be converted into malevolent essences. And those essences are one of the ingredients of Masterwork armor trim. But there is a catch. The trim also requires Presilic essences, which come from Torva armor and Asgarnia from Nex. So Morytania alone does not give me trimmed Masterwork armor. I would effectively need both Morytania and Asgarnia. And with the desert and the wilderness already consuming 2 of my 3 choices, that simply isn't going to happen. That leaves Morytania with some generally strong individual drops, Araxi's weapons and the tier 90 rod shields. For anyone who wants to lean particularly heavy into physical shields in Araxor, Morytania has become much more attractive because of the blessings. But I still don't think it gives my overall account enough, so Morytania is out. Although it was much closer than I originally expected. And now we reach the region that for a long time was my favorite for the 3rd slot, Kandarin. The biggest reason is Ancient Invention. Ancient gizmos allow dramatically stronger perk combinations than standard gizmos, and on a normal account I would absolutely want them for a fully optimized endgame setup. Kandarin also offers the player on farm numerous farming patches, the fishing guild, the Hall of Memories, and a huge range of convenient skilling locations. For melee, it provides one of the most important weapons for a dedicated Bleeds build, the Masterwork Spear of Annihilation. It also offers pneumatic gloves, which are needed for the upgraded Champion Wings enchantment. And for ranged, the legions provide Ascension crossbows, including the offhand Ascension crossbow required to create the tier 90 ranged defender. There are also some potentially enormous relic synergies. Animal Wrangler becomes significantly better when combined with the player on farm in Kandarin. And Perfection obviously becomes much stronger when Ancient Invention is available. But Ancient Invention no longer feels powerful enough to decide the entire region choice by itself. The best Ancient Invention gizmo combinations would obviously make my equipment much stronger. Metal X2 is already giving us enormous amounts of power through its passive effects, combat blessings, and relics. Even standard gizmos can still provide useful perks such as Biting, Aftershock Precise, and a lot more. So the question is, would Ancient Invention make me strong enough to justify everything I give up by choosing Kandarin over Asgarnia or Anachronia? And I don't think so. The player on farm has become less decisive. The range out of time in Anachronia will still be available on its own. The Masterwork Spear is perhaps the strongest remaining argument if I want to build completely on melee builds. But a spear tip itself is extremely rare, and bleeds are probably not a deciding factor for my build. And Kandarin has one major weakness compared with the final alternatives. There is no real endgame bossing here. The legions are the only boss, and they are not really interesting or relevant in the endgame. If you want the strongest possible invention setup, Kandarin may be essential, and if you add Perfection, it becomes significantly more attractive. If you build around Bleeds and the Masterwork Spear, Kandarin may be essential. And if you love the player on farm and want to go for Animal Wrangler, Kandarin feels like a must-pick region. But in the end, Ancient Invention, the player on farm, and Masterwork Spear are not enough to overcome the region's weaknesses for my particular account. So Kandarin does not make it into the finale. That leaves Asgarnia and Anachronia, and this is where the decision becomes generally difficult, because these regions are both unique in their own way and have amazing content to offer. But that is for part 2. So in the next video I will put Asgarnia and Anachronia directly against each other and decide which region is the best completion for desert and wilderness. Thanks for making it this far. Let me know which region you would choose and whether I have just eliminated your favorite region for completely terrible reasons. Leave a like if you enjoyed this analysis and consider subscribing if you want to see the final decision, my relic choices and the full blessing build and want to keep up with more League content. God bless and see you in the next video.